recording just so I don't forget. Yeah, so I figured I would let Debbie introduce herself because her personal story is part of the reason she's become a Peace Fellow. So rather than me assuming what's important in Debbie's life, I'll let her introduce the things that she's interested in sharing with us. But since this is a new Rotary Club and most members don't really know much, if anything, about the Rotary Peace Center program, I thought I'd give you a quick introduction. It's just now over 20 years old. And we have had various peace centers over the years. Right now, we have 5 peace centers that offer master's degree programs and 2 peace centers that offer certificate programs. And Debbie is attending the only peace center that is in the Western Hemisphere. And it's right here in our district, District 7710 in North Carolina. So her peace center is a combined effort between the Duke University and the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So we call it the Duke UNC Peace Center. There's also a master's program in Japan, England, Australia, and Sweden. And to become a Peace Fellow at the master's level, you have to be well established in your career and have a career that is somehow focused on peace building or the potential for it to be focused on peace building. And so David and I have been host families before. Mike is serving as a host family for Debbie. David and I hosted a Peace Fellow from Korea, South Korea, and his work was with the Korean Red Cross all over the world. And then prior to that, we hosted a prosecutor who worked in Brazil for the government. And so he was deeply involved in dealing with corruption in Brazil. So Peace Fellows can have all different kinds of backgrounds. There's also now 2 certificate programs. These are a little bit different in that they are also for kind of mid-career type people, but these now are focused on having a regional impact. There's a peace center in Uganda, and to participate in that peace center, you must live or work or be involved in work in Africa. And then the very brand new one, and Ed Picard went to the opening of this center, is in Turkey. And the work for Peace Fellows there must involve either the Middle East or North Africa as a focus of their work. And I was going to say something else as it relates to that, but it's skipping my mind. So I'm just going to let it go. Oh, to say basically, the Peace Fellows is an incredibly competitive process. It's very competitive. And there are about 20, 22 Peace Fellows every year in the United States. And this is what I was going to say, every person that is at the United States Peace Center came from someplace else. If you are a Peace Fellow, you may not study in your home country. So if we have a Peace Fellow from the United States, they're going someplace else, Australia, England, Sweden, somewhere. So anyway, so Debbie's classmates all came from someplace else. So I am done talking, Debbie. Let me hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Marie. Thank you, David. Let me just share my screen. Just give me one moment. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you very much once again for this wonderful opportunity. So instead of having a few minutes to introduce myself, I might introduce myself as I go along with the presentation. So one of the things that Marie had asked me to do was to share my experience as a Rotary Peace Fellow at both the Duke and UNC Rotary Peace Center. So my presentation outline is going to entail a little bit of blend of my country and my professional journey, a little bit about me, and then what I've been able to learn so far from my Rotary Fellowship, and then some final reflections and an appreciation. So just maybe to say, before I start speaking about my country, one of the things that I must say has been a very interesting thing for me being here and even learning some of these things is embracing the use of technology. And so even in preparing this presentation, I attempted to use something that's very, very different that I hadn't used before. But because we are encouraged, to be as creative as possible in our assignments, in everything that we do, it kind of pushes you, around, beyond to think outside the box. So as Marie said, so I come from both Rwanda and Kenya, but at the moment, because I've been living in Rwanda for the longest time, this is where I call home. So just a little bit about my country. So I decided to put a small map here. This is the map of Africa, and this place where it's circled is where Rwanda is. So as you can see, it's a very small dot on the map and a very small country. It's a small country, but has a country that has gone through a lot. So when immediately when you hear about the Rwanda, people always, we refer to ourselves as the land of a thousand hills, and this is because if you've been to Rwanda or you're planning to go to Rwanda, one of the things you need to know about our country is that there are very many hills, and it's very beautiful. The weather is wonderful, and it's just a beautiful country, despite its horrific past. So unlike how we have different seasons here in the United States, we have seasons, two rainy seasons in March, from March through May, and October through December. And then the rest of the year, it's usually warm. And some of the temperatures that we get to experience, obviously, these temperatures tend to fluctuate from time to time, especially with climate change. Sometimes these temperatures are not always constant. And so our most of our kind of like the what would be equivalent to the summer here is what we call our hottest months, which is usually June, July, August, and September, right before it begins to rain in October. So our population, our current population is around, I would say, 13.5 million, more or less. And because we are a country that experienced the genocide against the Tutsi, which I'll get to talk a little bit more in my next slide, a good percentage of our population is below 35 years. And so and then another fun fact about Rwanda, because we're a very youthful country, so we do categorize, unlike the UN definition of youth, for us, we categorize youth as individuals between 16 and 35. So in addition to our geographical context, one of the things that I wanted to share about Rwanda, when I think of Rwanda or when I think of my country, I think of it as a country that is resilient, because it embodies our extraordinary journey immediately after the genocide against the Tutsi. So our history. So here I used these two images that you see on my far right is the emblem of Rwanda, but also our cultural attire and the flag of Rwanda. So our history, 30 years ago, Rwanda experienced the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So I did not live through the genocide, but I have family members, my late dad, who was one of those who joined the liberation struggle so that they could be able to have a place they could call home. So for the longest time, my dad and his family were refugees in Kenya. That's how he ended up meeting my mom, which I'll get to also speak about a little bit more about in the next slide. And so for me, learning about the history of my country, but also learning about how some of my ancestors suffered because they were seen as people who are not belonging of a place they called home. And so this year, which marks 30 years after the genocide, Rwanda has made tremendous progress in terms of recovery. Obviously, prior to us being where we are at today, there are a lot of steps that had to be taken, including truth telling, establishing. We had one of the local transitional justice mechanisms known as the Gacaca courts, which saw over 2 million perpetrators being, tried and serving their prison sentences. Then when you look at what now we have been doing to move forward as a country, is that every April, from April to July 4th, we commemorate the lives of Tutsis who are lost during the genocide. And this provides an opportunity for the families who lost their loved ones to commemorate and remember. But it's also an educational platform for young people to get to know about our history, but with more focus on what we can do in the present to make sure that we have a better future. Um, so when you look at present day Rwanda today, we are characterized by a country that has political stability. We have seen a lot of unity and reconciliation happening, both in Rwanda and also within our neighboring countries. We have economic growth, but obviously being a developing country that's relevantly new, we still have lots of challenges, especially in terms of the agricultural sector. Poverty is still a huge challenge, but also even in terms of education, because in Rwanda, we were a country that was initially colonized by French-speaking colonies, and then we were later then colonized again by English-speaking colonies. So there has always been that shift from French to English. And then when Rwanda joined the East African community, which is comprised of Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and now Burundi, and Tanzania, because all those East African speaking communities were English speaking, Rwanda had to adopt to the English speaking system. So this kind of led to a lot of, I would say, like a lot of confusion, especially among children who initially started learning in French. The teachers were not prepared. So it became how do I say, like, it became a bit more complicated. And so this is one of the reasons why sometimes I personally, as someone who has worked in the country, tend to see this as a challenge. But regardless of that, we are still moving on as a society. We are also moving towards innovation and technology because, like, unlike most African countries, Rwanda is a landlocked country. And so this means because we are landlocked, we don't have access to the sea. The only thing that we rely on is our exports and also taxation so that we can be able to survive as a country. And so with this, we have built one of the best hubs, I would say, in the region. And so people tend to come there for big meetings, and this is how the country can be able to generate income that continues to sustain us. Now moving along, about to tell you a little bit about myself. So I began with a quote that I think has shaped my entire career since I began working. I believe that peace begins with understanding and understanding begins with listening. For me, I believe that for you to be a peace builder or for you to be able to work with communities from diverse backgrounds, you need to be a good listener. When you're a good listener, you're able to open your mind to so many perspectives and understand that not everyone will have the same understanding as you, but at the same time, you have to respect people's understanding. So, about me, I consider myself a peace educator, a trauma healing practitioner, and now at the moment, a Rotary Peace Fellow. For the past 10 years prior to joining the Rotary Peace Center at UNC and Duke, I worked with a peace building and social justice organization called Never Again Rwanda. The mission of this organization was to promote peace, but also it was founded by, at the time, 3 university students who had seen how they were refugees in Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they saw how them being at the National University of Rwanda at the time, students would go into the washroom and, write threat messages and say, we will kill you again, and you're not going to have, this place is not your home. So they began engaging in debates and dialogues with students, and just so that they could get their perspective on what they think needs to be done so that peace can be achieved. And so that's how Never Again Rwanda was founded. And so when I joined the organization, so I had just graduated from, I have an undergraduate in counseling psychology and a minor in social work, which I did in Kenya. And so when I joined the organization, as an intern, because at the time, obviously, being a developing country, and a country that also is really trying to, put itself out there, employment is also one of the biggest challenges. And so for me, getting a job wasn't the easiest thing. And so I decided to maybe start off as an intern with an organization and see how I could grow with them. And so that's how I ended up growing with Never Again Rwanda. So in the process, I got to learn more about peace and resilience, but I also dedicated my 10 years to the organization, and most of the work I was doing with young people through exchange programs. We actually have a program that's called the Peacebuilding Institute, where we would bring together young professionals and university students from different countries across the world, including the US. And through that, we had a partnership with Weber State University and King State College in New Hampshire. So the students would come to Rwanda to learn about our post-genocide experience, and they would spend 2 weeks where we had a blended program of taking them through different memorials, but also engaging in classroom conversations, and they would also get to learn from their fellow Rwandan peers. So I also ended up being passionate about strategic planning, because I believe that any program that you end up implementing has to make sure that it's taking into consideration all the different dynamics of a society you're working with. In addition to that, so some of the, because currently I'm a full-time Rotary Peace Fellow, so by the time I left Rwanda, I had left my job, but I still do receive a lot of, I would say, support from my fellow workers who we keep in touch, because it's always good to build this network, which I've seen a lot with Rotary. And so at the moment, I would consider myself an aspiring scholar, scholarly writer, because I have been working with Dr. Janet Rogers, who's a fellow at King's College in the UK. So she used to work with Never Again Rwanda, and I supported her as a research assistant. And so when she had this opportunity to write an article about the contributions of children to peace building in Rwanda, she asked me if we could co-author this article. But I'm also part of a technical working group with Aegis Trust. Aegis Trust is also an international organization that has its roots in the UK, but also has a branch in Rwanda, and they're the ones who run the Kigali Genocide Memorial. And so for that, we are also writing a policy blog and a policy paper and a policy blog about the role of children in memory, with a focus on transitional justice. So I also say that in addition to that, I am committed to bridging generations, because I believe that the only way we can be able to shape the future is if we look into the past, and ensuring that future generations are able to learn from what happened in the past. So I chose to put the two flags below this slide, because I consider myself, even though I am Rwandan, but I still consider myself to have affiliates to Kenya because of my mom, and also because I grew up and because of the family that I have from there. So, in addition to that, one of the things that I truly appreciate that the Rotary Center has enabled us to do is to reflect on our personal journey and what we think is important for us. So, one of the things personally about me, I always, because when I tend to engage in conversation with students, they always ask us, like, how did you find yourself here? And obviously, I tell them about how we applied for this Rotary Peace Fellowship, and we received the sponsorship to be able to come study here. And I always tell them, like, because, they ask, how did you find about this? How's the education system in Rwanda? Are people able to afford to come and study in the United States? And I said that would be like a really, like something next to impossible, if that makes sense, because most of us come from really humble backgrounds, and so our families are not able to support us to be able to pay for education, for instance, in an institution such as UNC or Duke. So a lot of us who end up, let's say, going to school in Rwanda, it's either because, or if we want to, because most of us really, especially as young professionals who know so much about the field, we always aspire to study abroad, because when you study abroad, there's a certain level of experience you gain that you don't get to gain from home. And also because we've seen how the education system is, we are aware that our country is still developing. And so this is why it's really crucial when we get, and also when it's really crucial for us to get such opportunities, because we are able to not only share what we have learned, but also make a difference sometimes in our community, such as what I've been trying to do with this article that I'm writing. So one of the things that we have been doing as Rotary Peace Fellows during this semester, we were encouraged to write a personal strategy paper. And out of this personal strategy paper, we're supposed to draw a mission statement. And so this is my mission statement. So I won't read through each and every one of them, but one of the things that I'm really committed to is to leverage on my previous knowledge, but also to grow in expertise and to commit to growth and resilience, because obviously coming in to a new society with a new way of life, it sometimes requires a lot of resilience for you to be able to move forward, to even withstand the cold weather, something that most of us are not used to. And also to kind of learn more about a balanced and purposeful approach, especially in terms of focusing on both my strength, but also getting to understand what are some of the weaknesses that I have and where can I grow in those areas. So, in addition to that, as part of this Rotary Peace Fellowship, one thing that has really stood out for me, or some of the things that have really stood out for me, is getting to learn about the international landscape of social work practice, because I had been working a lot with local communities. And so, coming here, I got to learn a lot about social work practice, especially from an international perspective. What are some of the challenges that I entail in this process? I also got to learn about integrating theory and practice. So as a social work student, we have classes Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday. We get to practice at an organization. So prior to coming to the School of Social Work, we had interviews with some of the faculty who are in charge of student placements, and they got to learn more about the work that we're doing, and then that would then be the basis of, and also depending on our interest, and that would be the basis of where they place us for our practicums. So for me, because I was really interested in refugee resettlement and immigration, I had requested to see if I can be placed at an organization that supports refugees, excuse me, and migrants. And so that's how I ended up finding myself at Refugee Community Partnership, which is based in Cabro. And so I usually go there every Wednesday and Thursday from 9 to 5. And through working with this organization, I was actually very, very appreciative of the fact that I was able to find a community. Well, most of them have been relocating to different parts of the state, but I was able to at least meet a couple of the community members from the Democratic Republic of Congo who came to the United States as refugees and as migrants in different seasons. And because some of the communities, because a part of Congo used to be a part of Rwanda, during the scramble and partition. And so some of those are actually Rwandans, even though they also identify as Congolese, and they speak Kinyarwanda and Swahili, languages which I both speak. So part of my journey with Refugee Community Partnership was also being able to provide some translation services, because one of the things they do is language navigation for the community to be able to get access to different resources. So in addition, it has been a journey of personal reflection. I remember one of the assignments that I had was really, really difficult for me, was to look into we were required to look into critical race theory and think about some of the scenarios that have happened to us, depending on obviously whether you identify. And because I identify as a Black person, it was really tough for me to write this paper. But and it took me a while, even to to think about the concept, think about the idea, think about some of the negative experiences that I had experienced, because we were required to put in both the negative and the positive experiences, which is something personally I wasn't prepared for. So it has fostered a lot of that, and also critical analysis, in the sense that we learn a lot of information, but you choose what you feel is best suited for you based on the community and population you'll be working with. In addition to that, one of the things I appreciated the most about the program is that you get to choose whether you want to do direct practice or you want to do community management and policy practice. So for me, because in my previous experience, I worked directly with the community and I was doing trauma informed and psychosocial support care, I chose to do the community management and policy practice route, because I believe that everything I saw at the community level is informed by what happens at the policy level. I also appreciate the interinstitutional learning. It's very rare for you to see a program where you can be able to take courses between two amazing institutions, both UNC and Duke, which I think has really been really beneficial for my learning. So I chose to also include a few pictures here just to show you a pictorial overview of some of the amazing things that we've been doing as Rotary Peace Fellows. So the first picture, this one right here. So this is Hanan. Hanan is also a Rotary Peace Fellow from Ethiopia, and she's in the School of Public Health. So we attended a diplomatic discussion which with the former ambassador to Ethiopia and Chad, and it was really interesting, getting to see their perspective from a political point of view, and it was a good learning experience. And then in addition to that, we not only engage in education activities, we also do voluntary work. So to commemorate the International Day of Peace, we went to Habitat for Humanity at Orange County, and we worked with Build at Weavers Group, who build affordable homes for migrants and vulnerable communities who can't afford housing. And so this picture actually at the bottom right was us engaging in the process of building. And then this picture right here, so this her name is Paula, and this is Gideon, and then the rest of us and Jack, and all the rest of us are all class 22 fellows, and these other three are class 23 fellows. So we had just come from Duke, and we're at the bus stop, because one of the things that we do as fellows is also share our own personal journeys with other fellows. So we had just come from class, and then we had a brown bag session where we got to hear about Paula's experience. She's from Bolivia, and we got to hear about her amazing experience and how she found herself here as a class 23 fellow. And it was really, really wonderful. So it kind of fosters that bonding, but also the connection among Rotary Peace Fellows. The last picture is, this was an assignment you were supposed to do. The title of the assignment was Meet Your Neighbor. And so we were paired with random students, not really random, but students from different health programs. And the person in the social work, so me here, I was supposed to be the leader of the group. So the task was, you have their email addresses, reach out to them, find a meeting spot that would be meaningful to you, and share why you think it's important for us as health professionals to be able to collaborate. So each of these students, she's in dentistry, she's a nursing student, she's a medical student, and she's in pharmacy. And of course, for me in social work. So we had a really wonderful conversation about why we think it's important for us to collaborate. And then thereafter, we were supposed to write a paper about that. I just as I could come towards the conclusion of my presentation, I developed a little mind map that I decided will guide my journey, because before I start, I love journaling a lot. And so one of the things I decided to do coming here was to come with a lot of curiosity, humility, because being aware that even though I know a little bit of experience, I also have to be humble enough to be able to learn. I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome at the beginning, because you think of yourself as not being good enough. I remember when I was doing my first assignment, I was reading through and I kept asking myself, is my English even correct? Does this even make sense? Will the professor understand what I'm saying? And so, with time, you get to build that confidence. But obviously, at the beginning of it's a bit challenging. The other thing I also feel is it's important to embrace change, because it's very different. Everything is so different from what I'm used to back home, including the weather, the food. Everything is very, very different. But when you embrace change, then you tend to become more open to the experience. One of the other things I really appreciate about Rotary is how it was able to build a connection for each of us. As you can see, these different arms that I put here, they're from different shades, but also representing different parts of the world. Just as Marie said, none of us are from here. All of us come from countries that have experienced, if you get to speak to each of the fellows, they each have a unique story. And most of them have, especially those from Yemen and Gaza, they have experienced, really horrific experiences from their countries. And so through that connection, we're able to collaborate, but also support each other. And then also it's important to have a purpose and impact, not to only let the knowledge that I've learned stay within me, but also make an impact in wherever the world ends up putting me after my Rotary Peace Fellowship. So I decided to use this as a conversation with someone we had on one of the days where we were waiting for other fellows. So a few weeks ago, when we had come from our class at Duke, we were waiting for some of the other fellows so that we could walk to the bus stop. And Mr. Stroleli, who is also, he's the director of the MIDP Writing Center, and he had had a session with us in one of the classes about writing. So he asked us, how has your journey been so far? And then he said, on a scale of 100%, how do you feel what do you feel you bring to the program? And how much do you plan to take back if you happen to find yourself either in your home country or in a different part of the world? So I said I bring 50% because obviously being a professional who had worked in the field before, I felt like I have something to bring on the table. And then I said I would like to take 50% back. He said, this sounds really interesting, but I would encourage you to gain for 75% because you already have the 50%, and then retain the 50% to be able to include that 70% as part of your learning experience. So this was something very powerful and impactful for me that continues to shape my journey as I conclude my first semester and looking forward to my next semester. So some of my final reflections and appreciation. First and foremost, I am truly, truly grateful to the Rotary Peace Foundation, for sponsoring me and other fellows as well. I throughout my fellowship, I've noted how with the Rotary Peace Fellowship, it's more than just formal education. It's about building a community. It's about embracing diversity. It's about fostering solidarity and restoring hope. For some of us, I did mention this at the beginning of my presentation, but when I was learning about, unhoused individuals and some of the challenges they face, it was personally impactful for me because me and my family have once been in a situation where we were unhoused. And so I understand that very well. And so it being here, makes me realize that there is hope, not only for me, but for other people who come from really humble beginnings. And then also my own personal journey has been filled with joy, love, and adventure, and a personal appreciation to Mike and Leslie, who have been my incredible family away from home. So they not only open their doors, they also open their hearts, which I am truly grateful for. The last thing I would like to say is that Rotary support and contribution, they've also been very transformative. And, this has been a good opportunity to get to learn about myself, but also to get to learn about others. I had never in my lifetime imagined that I would be in a class with, people from very diverse communities and getting to learn from their own personalized experiences. And to that, I would like to say thank you. And thank you for having me. And it's been wonderful sharing my journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.